Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we've got an opportunity to move another, perhaps as many as 14 of these bills, so look forward to moving this process forward. But thank you for this very important hearing this morning. For those of us in Alaska, our parks are pretty special. And not that they are not special in other parts of the country. I think ours are just bigger and they take up more space, and they're a constant reminder of the national treasures that we have. I thank you, Dr. Coburn, for your interest in this issue, your interest in ensuring that we are on a path towards greater sustainability when it comes to the operation and maintenance of our national parks and our park system. Mr. Chairman, I do believe that we're taking an important step today with this hearing in starting this discussion about how we're going to pay down the National Park Service's maintenance backlog, which the Park Service estimates at approximately $13 billion. Now, I'd like to be clear right away, I don't think that this is an issue that should be solved through additional federal funding. We all know around here that we're facing very serious fiscal situation, so we've got to be looking at new and I think alternative ways to find funding for the park system, and also to really reassess, reevaluate our current funding priorities. One of those areas that I think we need to be looking at is what is happening within the Land and Water Conservation Fund and this very significant increases that we're seeing there. Coming from a state where we've got close to 70% of our lands that are held by the federal government, I always approach requests to purchase additional federal land with some skepticism, and particularly during tough economic times. So I can't imagine why purchasing more is such a priority. It strikes me as almost counterintuitive that we would be adding more lands to the maintenance list when the government already is dealing with such obstacles when it comes to the maintenance of the existing park lands. I do think that this is an area where we would have potential for an agreement that we could update the statute, making it more relevant to our current reality, both from a public lands policy and a budgetary standpoint. I'd like to work with you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Coburn, Director Jarvis, on really reforming the LWCF so that this can be a tool that the National Park Service and other land management agencies can use to fund deferred maintenance before we buy additional lands to add to the federal burden. I appreciate that there are at times some sensitive, time-sensitive acquisitions that need to be made. I'd want to make sure that we have a process to include those, but as a general matter, I think that there is room here for compromise, and I look forward to a discussion on that topic this morning. The next area that I'd like to bring up is the potential for increased funding and involvement from outside group and the Friends groups. One of the major complaints that I hear from Friends groups are these bureaucratic obstacles that many of these groups face when they're trying to donate to the National Park Service for specific projects. We need to be looking at this. We need to figure out a way to streamline the process, encourage folks to contribute both their resources and dollars. Just yesterday, we got a press release from the Park Service out in Wrangell, St. Elias, and it's an advertisement, it's a public advertisement for a cleanup event on August 3rd out in the Chittenden area, and it's basically an invitation to folks in the area to come and help clean up. It's going to consist of burning scrap wood, recycling and picking up trash that's accumulated. Bring your sunglasses, your raincoats, your water bottles. The first 100 volunteers get a free T-shirt and a new water bottle, and lunch is going to be provided. Great. I think it's fabulous. It gives people real ownership in their parks, and I think that is huge for us. These are exactly the type of volunteer efforts that the Park Service should be using and expanding upon, not only to save money, but again, to bring locals into their parks for a very positive experience. I also hear from private CEOs who want to donate funds to the National Park Service and to specific parks, but they feel that their donations are not adequately recognized. I would hope that Director Jarvis can talk about how we can work together to improve the donation and the recognition procedures. An idea that I'd like to put forward is for donor recognition throughout the national park system. For example, we should have tasteful recognition of private donors who are willing to pay for specific maintenance backlog projects, perhaps the naming of a room in a visitor center, the naming of a bench, There are dollars that I think we can bring into the park system, but we need to make it easy. We need to make it worthwhile for these donors. We just passed through the House and the Senate a measure that would allow for recognition of donors to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I think there's some ideas out there that we can look to. Another thing that I'd like to raise before we turn to Dr. Coburn is looking at the current recreational fee structure. Some national parks charge entrance fees, others don't. I think we need to look at this fee plan and ensure that there's some equity across the National Park Service. I think it's kind of unfair that my constituents in Alaska have to pay to visit some of their parks, but that other folks around the country don't bear that same burden. For the parks that do not charge an entrance fee, maybe we should look at the idea of charging for parking within those parks. I'm told by the Park Service that if the National Park Service started charging for parking on the National Mall, this is just one example, they could raise an additional $2 million per year. I don't know that I want to pay more parking here in Washington, D.C., but it's an idea out there. And you could put the money back into the maintenance on the mall. So again, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased that we are at this point. I really do hope that this is the beginning of very constructive dialogue that allows us to address in a meaningful way the maintenance backlog of our wonderful national parks.